Hey everybody, welcome in. We are going to be talking about some MACtion, some MAC football today. Bright and early in the morning. It don't seem like I'm awake, that's why. Not because I'm not excited. I love MACtion football. So yeah, we got a 3-game slate here on the Tuesday. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get a Wednesday video out tomorrow. But let's just go ahead and focus on this Tuesday slate. We got 3 games. I don't know what there is not to love about midweek football. This is the best time of year. There's football on pretty much every single day. So, no exception today. So, yeah, I said at the beginning of the season, and it looks like it's going to hold true, that the MAC's going to be super high scoring because it was super high scoring last year. Beginning of conference play, there were some totals that were a little too low. Seems like the totals have been going up. We saw last midweek some crazy high scores. Will that be the same on this slate? I'm not sure. We have a total 57.5, 60.5, and 62. So decently high scoring. It's going to be as crazy as last week. Not sure. Okay, so let's start off. Buffalo versus Miami. Buffalo's plus 7.5, over under 57.5. Basically, the story with Buffalo is they're pretty much a full fade team with their coach Lance Leipold leaving. Very high on Lance Leipold. Now at Kansas. Not sure what he'll do at Kansas because it's Kansas. And then pretty much everyone else transferred out. A lot of their players transferred out before the year. They actually were decent to start the year, and it seems like the wheels have kind of fallen off the bus at this point. Miami, Ohio is one of the most difficult teams to read in the entire country, in my opinion. They just have nonsense results every week. They're just one of those teams that very difficult to peg. Overall, in my opinion of them, I think they are pretty good. And I guess I would mostly assume they're going to roll here. So, worth noting that for Buffalo, they've played probably the four worst defenses in the conference, which is saying something because there's a lot of bad defenses in the MAC. They've played Kent State, Ohio, Akron, and Bowling Green, so Buffalo's numbers are probably a little bit juiced. Miami's defense is probably kind of good. They gave up 35 to Ohio last week. We'll talk more about Ohio later, but that offense actually is pretty good. So, anyway, not sure how many points we can expect from Buffalo. We don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be. Kyle Van Treese, the starter, left last week with injury and did not return. They're just calling it a lower body injury. He's listed as the starter on the depth chart, but who the hell knows if he's going to play. We're going to get probably no reporting on this, maybe up until game time. So that probably means the ownership will be very low. I wouldn't really be that interested in Van Treese anyway. I think Matt Myers behind him. I'm kind of assuming Van Treese doesn't play, and he's just listed as a starter, but I could be totally off. Again, there's no reporting on this. Myers at 5.8K might, if you're playing 150 lineups, he probably makes his way in there. Actually, I don't even know. Do they open a contest with 150? If you're playing the max lineups, he probably makes his way in there, but it's not a fantastic matchup. Buffalo never really throws the ball that much. They're throwing a little bit more this year with the new coaching staff in there, but still not, they're not airing it out. Keon Williams is their main wide receiver at 6.3K. I think he's viable. He has 24 targets in his last 3. Oddly enough, only 11 completions. 24 targets, only 11 completions. Not the greatest passing team, but when he's the clear alpha, you can see that. Johnson at 4.6 probably sees a bump up with Giovanni Ruiz at 4.4, listed as doubtful. Anyone behind them, I really just think you're reaching, and I don't find any of them to be strong plays. All right, the running back room is where we have the interest with Buffalo. Year after year, they've been churning out some great running back rooms. Looks like this year is no exception. So the big news is with Kevin Marks. Is he going to play or not? Had some monster games in DFS last year. This year, he just hasn't gotten it going, and he's been hurt. So, again, no reporting. Missed last week. If he's back this week, I think it really muddies things up. I think either him and McDuffie both are still viable, but definitely secondary plays at that point. If Marks misses, which I am assuming he will, but again, that's just an assumption. Dylan McDuffie is a very strong play, probably the top running back on the slate at 6.9K. Just you see the workload there: 34 carries, 23 carries, 23 carries. Probably sees close to 20 carries if Kevin Marks returns, but we haven't seen a ton of the two on the field at the same time, or at least not in a while, and not in conference play a lot. So that would really muddy things up. Okay, Miami, Ohio. First and foremost, they're playing a Buffalo team that is god awful at stopping the run. Buffalo has allowed at least 200 yards rushing in 7 of its last 8 games. They are allowing 6.4 yards per play on the season. That's not good. Each of the last 3 teams that played Buffalo have pretty much just decided not to throw the ball at all. Why throw the ball when you can just run the ball whenever you want, wherever you want? So each of those 3 teams passed the ball below 20 times. So that's part of my worry with playing Miami, Ohio. Maybe they opt for the same game plan as home favorites. And that would really make things crazy because they have a running back by committee that's impossible to read. You're going to see Tracy, Davis, Shelton, Mosey. Bester was the lead back at one point a couple of years ago. It's a mess. I think Mosey is probably the safest bet, but he had 3 carries last week, so how can you possibly call something a safe bet when that is the case? So these guys are total dart throws. Playing such a bad rushing defense, there's probably, it's a possibility one of these guys is in the optimal lineup with such an easy matchup. But am I going to sit here and pretend like I know who? I don't think anybody knows who because it's a pure running back by committee. All right, quarterback-wise, Brett Gabbert. Yes, the other Gabbert's brother. Offense has looked a lot better with him. Had an absolutely monster performance. Almost had 50 fantasy points last week. Let's check out his line. Yep, 43.98 points, so not quite 50. But yeah, had 55 pass attempts. I think that's kind of an anomalous performance. You see there, they really don't like to throw the ball against Buffalo. But that's really high variance, like going from 24 pass attempts to 55. Again, difficult team to read. I think in general, if they have the game plan they want, they will establish the run here. Okay, wide receiver, it all starts with Jack Sorensen. I was very excited for him in the offseason and in season-long leagues, and very glad to have him there. He is going absolutely nuts now that it's max season. It's pretty much a lock for 20 points, or he has been. If you look at the game log, had 57 points last week. He's a man amongst boys. He's pretty much being treated like Devontae Smith from Alabama last year in the night slates, if you remember his pricing. It's pretty much where we're at with Jack Sorensen. There's some other good wide receivers. I don't think you absolutely have to play Sorensen, but especially in like cash, you got to be pretty ballsy to fade Sorensen. I think in cash you probably have to have him. GPPs, Akron's on the slate, so you can always just fade Akron if you don't want to pay up for Sorensen. Other than that, Hip and Hammer at 4.9. I think that's a pretty good price for Hip and Hammer. I do think he is a good player. I went to him some last week and it worked out very well. Do I go back to the well here? I'm not entirely sure because, like I said, I may have gotten a little lucky. They had 55 pass attempts last week. You probably get some leverage fading Sorensen, but again, pretty dangerous. Anyone behind that, I'm not super interested in. This guy Homer looks pretty good at 4.2K. And he's probably going to be on the field, but you can see there, they don't really feature him. But if you need a cheaper guy, I think he's one of my favorite guys around that range. All right, Akron. So Akron fired their coach. Why did they fire their coach? I don't really know. They were looking pretty good. They actually almost beat Ball State last week. Almost pulled off the upset. They fumbled to lose. Fumbled in the end zone because, of course, they did. It's Akron. But still, I don't know. Akron stinks. Maybe they're just tired of being bad, but it's kind of weird to fire him after that performance, in my opinion. So here they are, a fade team with no coach. Sometimes you see teams rallying this spot. Sometimes they fall flat. Wild card. Overall, all we know is that they stink. Their defense stinks. Their offense has looked a little bit better. They're playing a Western Michigan team that had a bad defense a year ago and has looked pretty good this year. That being said, they've given up some points at spots this year. So, difficult read on this Western Michigan defense. Overall, I think Akron's probably going to score a couple touchdowns. Zach Gibson's going to be the quarterback. He took over for DJ Irons last week. And Zach Gibson played pretty well here. Mostly a passer. He doesn't have the rushing upside Irons does. Obviously did lose that fumble. We see there he threw for 331 yards and 2 touchdowns against Ball State. At 5K, I think he's probably going to be pretty popular, but hard for me to not get there, especially with the good wide receivers on the slate. you get them and McDuffie and maybe a Western Michigan running back, Akron really makes it affordable. Mumpfield at 5.9K, that's just obviously too low of a price point. He has 28 targets in the last 3 games. Matheson's right behind him with 23 targets. I think Mumpfield has the higher upside. Last week we saw it was Matheson who got the points. I went to Matheson last week because there was a pretty big price discrepancy. This week with them that close, I think Mumpfield has to be the play, right? I would assume Matheson gives you a little leverage if you want to go that route. And the target data, like I said, it's only 5 off in the last 3 games. But yeah, Mumpfield's freshman. He's been super impressive. Targets through the roof. Not really sure. I guess you can consider it a volatile situation since it's Akron, but they're usually going to be playing from behind. They're 26-point dogs. Mumpfield's a very, very, very strong play. Forgot the running backs. As far as running back, Jonzel Norris has taken over the running back room. Has 11 carries and 17 carries. Again, you can't really forecast a huge workload because they're 26-point dogs. But he's been very productive in his last 2 weeks. Is he going to get a 74-yard run every week? Is he going to get a touchdown every week? I can't tell you with certainty he will. At 5.7K, I think that's a pretty fair price, but it is pretty cheap for a starting running back. So, okay. Anyone behind those receivers, I wouldn't consider. If I'm missing anyone, the data didn't really stick out to me, but I didn't really see anyone interesting. All right, Western Michigan. Caleb Ellaby at 7.5K is going to be a strong play. Has not had a very good year. We've seen blow-up spots, but last year he was amazing. This year, they just haven't really needed to throw the ball all that much. But facing this terrible Akron defense, allowing 7 yards per play on the season, obviously he is interesting. I think both running backs for Western Michigan are extremely interesting. Again, 26-point home favorites. Sean Tyler and Ladarius Jefferson are going to split the workload. Sean Tyler's been the more productive of the two. He is a pretty good receiver, but it seems they have stopped using him in the receiving game. Or at least I think he's a pretty good receiver. We never see him do it. Obviously, he is in play. I think just with the price difference, Ladarius Jefferson, again, he's more of a big lumbering, short yardage guy, touchdown guy. I think this matchup, I would assume, favors him more. But then again, Sean Tyler could have 3 huge runs, and it's a plus matchup for either one. But yeah, Ladarius Jefferson, big bruiser. Michigan State transfer. I think this is a good matchup. If you really need price savings, I think Jackson Kincaid, Nevada transfer at 3.7K. He really doesn't see the field very much, but again, very good matchup. Okay, as far as receivers, very interested here. Sky Moore's 8.3K. Fantastic matchup. If you're going between him and Sorensen, I mean, in cash, I think you have to go Sorensen, right? Because he's had 20 points in, 5 straight games? Moore's had some blow-up spots. You can see there he gets about 7-8 receptions every single game, so that gives him somewhat of a floor. The touchdowns haven't totally been there against Akron. They probably will be. I think that's a fair price for Moore. If you want to pay up for Moore, I will not talk you out of it. If you're stacking Ellaby, you're probably more likely to go to Jalen Hall, unless you can afford both these guys. I think this is a good Jalen Hall spot. He is a pure deep threat. We saw it happen against Kent State, but haven't really seen it and break loose in many other performances this year. But we know it's there, and we know this is a good matchup. And he's had 5 receptions in 4 straight games, which is nice to see a little consistency. I think that is a very, very good price for Jalen Hall. I like that a lot. I'm assuming he'll be popular. Again, ownership in college is really hard to predict, but definitely have some interest. Corey Crooms, 4.7K. He was way too cheap last week. I hope you played him because he was coming off 2 duds. Didn't record any stats in his last 2 games. And then he had 27.8 points. I think he's good. I remember watching him in Pitt, and he got open every single play. This kid he's built like an NFL wide receiver. I'm not saying he's an NFL wide receiver, but he looks the part. I don't see any weaknesses. He's very good. The target data lacks behind Hall and Moore. I think with the pricing so close to Hall, it makes me inclined to play Hall here. Torres is the tight end at 3.1K. They're supposed to score a lot of points here. Could Torres stumble into one? Of course he could. But not a strong play. There's no punts really on this slate, which is one reason that's making me nervous. I'm not in love with any punts, so maybe Torres if you really need one. Okay. The pricing is not too bad, though. Like, some of the quarterbacks are cheap. Like, you go Rourke, Gibson at quarterback, and you probably don't need a punt. But, yeah. Okay, so Ohio. I think Ohio's offense is good. I know a lot of people were calling them like the worst team in college football or close to it earlier. I don't think they are. I think their offense is good. Obviously, they're better now than they were at the start of the year. Um, they've had 5.5 yards per play in every single game they've played this year, except for Louisiana. They've had 4 games where they averaged above 6.3 yards per play. Now, the issue is the defense can't get off the field, so the offense doesn't run a ton of plays. They're not really scoring a ton of points, and the defense probably won't get off the field here. But we saw a shootout last week with them. We could see a shootout here against Eastern Michigan that loves to get in shootouts. That's their bread and butter. They want to be in a shootout. I don't know. They have a good. I thought this team would collapse under Frank Solich, but they haven't. They still have a good rushing attack. I don't know. Compare them to Buffalo post Leipold. Totally different scenario. I think they've rebounded pretty well without Solich. So running back room, Tuggle at 7K. It's going to be one of your top guys on the slate running back wise. The workload really isn't there. He's very explosive. You're probably relying on some big runs. He gets a decent amount of receiving work, but you can see there, his workload's all over the place. 11 carries, 13 carries, 8 carries, 19, 17, 6, 5. He was in the doghouse to start the year, it seemed like. He's really taken over. He's the alpha. He has a plus matchup here. Eastern Michigan can't defend the rush. They're allowing 5 yards per carry almost on the season, and they allowed 672 total yards to Toledo last week, so not a very good defense. I think Tuggle's obviously in play. The guy below 4K, again, not a lot I like this week. I think Allison is in play. Only had 4 carries last week, but he does get a lot of receiving work. He had 5 catches last week, 7 before that against Kent State. Gets a decent amount of rushing attempts. It really looked like earlier on in the year, I remember watching that Northwestern game. Why the hell did I watch that Northwestern game? Ohio versus Northwestern. I don't know what I was doing. Anyway, I remember watching that and thinking, Sean Allison looked like a really good running back. Looked like he was good, getting some work as a receiver. I thought he was going to be the featured back. I actually picked him up in some spots in season-long leagues, and that was a dumbass decision for sure. But yeah, if it is a shootout, I think Allison probably has a pretty good game at 3.9K. All right, quarterback-wise, Curtis Rourke is taking over for Amani Rodgers. Again, this has been all over the place. Rodgers had, what did he have, a 98-yard rushing TD earlier on in the season. Against Buffalo. That was only a couple weeks ago with 35 fantasy points. And then next thing you know, he lost the job. So it seems to be Rourke's, but if Rourke struggles, we have seen they have a quick trigger, and there is a chance Rourke scores you like 2 points. Maybe has a fumble, a pick, and then they get rid of him. Maybe they have 3 straight 3-and-outs, and then they bench him. That's totally in play. But Rourke's played pretty well over the last 2 games. 31 fantasy points, 27 fantasy points. He has a little bit of rushing upside, not quite as much as his brother had. But you see there, he's not afraid to run. Had 12 rushing attempts last week. So there is a little bit of a floor there with the rushing. And then throwing the ball, listen, they don't have a great passing attack, but the offense is good. Like I said, I think they're underratedly good. I think Rourke is... he's way too cheap, I think, at 6.2K. That's a great price. All right, wide receiver-wise, Isaiah Cox. Yeah, played some of him last week. I think Isaiah Cox is good. Got off to a very slow start to the year, but obviously this team's going to throw the ball more with Rourke back there than they are with Rodgers, so that definitely benefits Cox. I don't think it's a fluke that he's had 2 of his best games in the last 2 weeks with Rourke at quarterback. 30 fantasy points last time out. That's probably a little bit anomalous because they don't like to throw the ball a ton, but he seems pretty clearly to be their number 1 guy at 4.9K. I think that is a decent price. Not a must play for me, but again, the pricing is just, it's hard not to. All right, Odom behind him at 4K. I think he's probably their secondary guy. In cash, he's probably viable as a cheap guy, but we haven't really seen the upside in tournaments. Other than that, Walton behind them. Again, there's just not a lot of work for these secondary options. They don't throw the ball enough. And then you have Luerman, the 2 tight end brothers. Ryan at 3K. If you really need a punt, I would not be shocked if he stumbled into a touchdown. But again, he is more likely to get you 1.2 fantasy points than a touchdown. But if you really need a punt. Okay, last but not least, Eastern Michigan. Yeah, blew up last week. They're facing Ohio. This defense just doesn't really look good at all at anything. Eastern Michigan, unfortunately, has a running back by committee, Evans, Hamilton, and Boone. I think just with the pricing, if you're going to play one, you probably just go Boone. He's the cheapest, and he had 15 carries last week. Hamilton doesn't get much usage. And this guy almost kept me from a takedown. I had the takedown of the Toledo Eastern Michigan game last week. And the guy I was fighting with had Juwan Hamilton. I'm like, why the fuck did you play Juwan Hamilton? But he got a touchdown, so that guy almost beat me. But he didn't. So anyway, not fond of Juwan Hamilton just for that reason. Nothing against the guy as a person, but doesn't get very much usage. I don't really know why you would play him. And other than that, Samson Evans seems to get some receiving usage and some goal line usage. If you're just guessing straight up who has the most fantasy points, Evans has to be your choice. But at 6.5K for a running back by committee, that's a pretty bad price. Like, he's more expensive than Curtis Rourke. Okay, quarterback-wise, Ben Bryant, Cincinnati transfer. Looks pretty good. Took over for Preston Hutchinson, which almost nobody saw coming. Apparently, they didn't think a quarterback coming in from a team like Cincinnati to Eastern Michigan, they didn't think that was a threat to his job. I'm not really sure why people didn't think that, but now they know. Ben Bryant looks pretty good. This team throws the ball a decent amount. As we see here, 41 pass attempts, 26, 48, 31. It's kind of all over the place. Difficult game skip to predict. Like I said, Ohio was looking a lot better, but their defense still sucks. So I think anyone on Eastern Michigan is viable. Ben Bryant at 6.8K, that's too cheap. It's just flat out, it's too cheap. So you can pick and choose your spots. Like I said, these totals are very similar. You just kind of have to choose who you want to go with. I wouldn't talk you off Ben Bryant at all. You can pretty much afford who you want to afford in this one. All right, Hassan Bay Dunes is top wide receiver. Price jump all the way to 7.4K. That makes it tough for me to get to him. I think in cash games, he's super reliable because he sees a ridiculous amount of PPR usage. This is a guy who didn't have a single touchdown last year, and now probably everyone's going to be on him after he had 2 touchdowns this past week. But again, those touchdowns usually are not going to be there, and I'm a huge Hassan Bay Dune fan, playing him in season long. But here, 7.4K with some of the other wide receivers on the slate, it's going to be difficult for me to have a ton of Hassan Bay Dune. Okay, Tanner New at 4.8K is a very strong play. Nobody knows, or at least seems like nobody knows what happened to this guy. I expected him to have a big year coming into the year because the usage is going to be there. They throw the ball a ton. He was the top outside guy. And since I like Bay Dune, but he never catches any touchdowns, it seems like Tanner New is the touchdown guy. And then he just disappears. Disappears for 9 weeks. And then on the 10th week, he comes back and just magically reappears in the end zone, catching touchdowns again. So I don't know. He's back. Mysteriously back. Looked healthy. Looked good. I think that's going to drop Drummond at 5.5K. That makes Drummond pretty much fade for me. He's been pretty good. But when his price range, he's more expensive than guys like Hip and Hammer, even more expensive than New. That just makes it tough for me to get there unless you are looking for leverage. Because like I said, they do throw the ball a lot, so he could have a decent game. But not my favorite play. And yeah, Tanner New, 9 targets last week, so it looks healthy. Okay, other than that, tight ends, I guess we have to monitor if Cannon's going to play. Looks like we have no reporting, so if Cannon plays, he's decent as a below 4K guy, but no priority. And if he doesn't play, I think Odakuya is one of my favorite below 4K guys. He's the tight end filling in. 3 receptions, 4 receptions in the last 2 games. All right, folks, that wraps up the slate. Again, you can pretty much afford who you want. I think if you're looking for huge upside, a Miami-Ohio stack could get it done. Western Michigan stack, they're probably pretty safe in cash, and then maybe in tournaments as well. If you're looking to get different, I would assume Ohio would not be super popular, and their offenses look pretty good. But honestly, pretty much all these teams are looking fine. These totals are all pretty decent. They're all lined pretty closely except for the Akron game. And like I said, the Akron guys are really cheap, and like Mumfield and Gibson are viable as well. So I think you can have a pretty stacked lineup. I probably won't go with a ton of stacks unless I run more lineups than I currently have. Like I said, then I'll probably throw in some stacks, Miami stacks, etc. But as I'm doing it right now, you can pick and choose your spots and probably get a pretty loaded lineup. So, okay, enjoy the show. Thanks for listening. At YonkerCFB on Twitter. Prize picks, we've been killing the prize picks. I don't have a full 5 picked out just because there are not enough offerings up yet. If I get to a full 5, because I like to play a full 5, I'll tweet it out. But I wasn't able to get there with these, so I didn't force it. I like Mumfield over 14 fantasy points. Sean Tyler over 14.5 fantasy points are looking good to me. So I'll see if I could get to 5, but right now those 2, I'm going to go ahead and lock those up in a power play. It's at YonkerCFB on Twitter. Once again, prize picks, promo code is Yonke, all caps, YONKE. Link is in the description. You get $100 free. 100% instant deposit match. Who doesn't love free money? If you want to just put in $25, you get $25 back. It's 100% deposit match, up to 100. Okay, thanks for listening, and good luck.